Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. I'm sort of seeing some faces online, some faces that I recognize and some faces that I don't. But welcome. I am thrilled that you're here. We are at Culinaria in Vienna, Virginia tonight. I keep moving the classes around a little bit just so that I'm one step ahead of the law. I've gotten thrown out of the other two places that we've done classes, my house and my son's house. So the folks at Culinaria gratefully took me in. We have muted everybody, or we're asking everybody to mute themselves while we get started. But if you have questions as we're going through, please unmute yourself. And as I said last week or a week and a half ago when we did the last class, if you would, when you ask a question, identify yourself. First name is fine. As I said, I know some of you are in the witness protection program, so you may not want to give us your last name. So let me talk a little bit. First, actually, just a couple of things. Let me get the commercial stuff out of the way. You've seen the Chef Selman logo that we spent hours of time and oodles of money designing. But there were two other logos on the recipe packet this week. And let me just talk a little bit about them because these are the folks that are helping to make these classes come to work, basically. First is CYM Media. CYM is a creative marketing company when it comes to content, products, branding, and the ideas that move us forward. We are all in, and their intensity shows. CYM is committed to exploration and creativity in marketing, content creation. They're focused on generating new ideas to help clients reach their goals. If you have need for marketing, advertising, public relations, photography, video production, website development, geez, I could use some website development, never mind. Their website and their URL is on the cover of the recipe packet. So check them out. They do great work. Let me also thank the folks at Culinaria Cooking School. Those of you that have been here, you know about Culinaria. Those of you who have not, who I've worked with at Sur La Table at Pike and Rose. This is actually kind of the first place that allowed me to teach. So my heart and my head, this is a very important place to me. Culinaria was started in November of 2010 by Stefan Sands and Pete Snaith. We offer both demonstration classes and participation classes. We do kids classes, and in normal times, this place is filled during the summer with summer camps. It is an educational environment. It's an interactive environment, and most of all of the people here are extraordinary instructors with a passion for sharing their knowledge and their love of food. So Culinaria is starting to come back and do some classes. We are going to continue doing some stuff here, Zoom classes from here, but take a look at their schedule as well. Obviously reduced numbers, people are wearing masks and gloves and all that kind of stuff. So they're not doing a whole lot, but they are starting to come back a little bit. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't see anything happening at Sur La Table in the near term in terms of cooking classes. And as I mentioned in our last class, though, the store is open. So that's a good thing. I wanted to see if the folks that were with me the last class on the 11th, if you had any questions about the stuff that we did. We did the grilled romaine Caesar salad. We did the chicken shawarma with Israeli salad, hummus, and the grilled peaches. Any thoughts, any comments? Some of you sent me some notes on some of the recipes and the stuff that you did, but any thoughts or any questions on that last class?
The chicken shawarma was a real big hit. I did it with the family, and they all loved it. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, good. Did anybody try the other sheet pan chicken recipe?
Yes, we did. It's Estelle and Rick. We did it. It was delicious. I did it with the smoked paprika.
Right. Excellent.
Good.
Good.
The Caesar salad I did with a couple of baby romaines that I got at the farmer's market, and it turned out fabulous.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, very good. Does everybody have a copy of the recipe packet? I hope. What I'd like to do is start, as we typically do in our classes, go through the recipe packet, talk about what we are going to do tonight. And then we're going to get on with it, and I'm going to start doing some cooking. First thing that I'm going to do is take your favorite, hopefully your favorite sandwich, and turn it into a salad. This is a bacon, lettuce, and tomato salad. This is one of these things to me that just is simple, stupid, and when you do it for the first time, you kind of say, why didn't I ever do that before? So I'll walk you through that. We are going to do pasta with fresh tomatoes and crab. When I did this, the last time that I did this a couple of weeks ago at home, I actually used box pasta, which is fine. But I know that a lot of you have wanted to do pasta classes, so I figured this is a great opportunity for me to show you how to make fresh pasta and roll it out. So I'm going to do that as well. And then for dessert, this is something simple and easy that comes together very, very quickly. It is a chocolate cherry sorbet. Literally, I'm using frozen cherries, bagged frozen cherries, a little bit of yogurt, a little bit of sugar, some chocolate, and it all goes into the food processor. And literally, it comes out right out of the food processor, and you can serve it. You can also, of course, make it in advance and stick it in the freezer. Simple summertime dessert. So let's get started. Let me get my notes. And what I want to do is start with the pasta first. So when we talk about doing pasta, there are a couple of things here. First of all, we usually do talk about it as a 1-egg pasta, 2-egg pasta, 3-egg pasta. And kind of defining that basically is that what I look at as being a 1-egg pasta would feed 2 people for a dinner-sized portion, maybe 3 people for like an appetizer portion. 2-egg pasta would certainly feed 4 people pretty easily, 3-egg pasta and on up from there. When you get up to 3 or 4 eggs, then it's a little bit more difficult to do it by hand, so you can use the food processor for that. The nice thing about using the food processor for, say, a 4-egg pasta is that everything goes into the processor at once. You basically spin it around, and once that dough collects on the blade, you're pretty much done. So let me show you how I do this. Now, normally if I was home, I would do this in a bowl just to contain the mess. And when I do that, I apologize to Italian grandmothers. But so you all will be able to see this, I wanted to be able to do this on the counter tonight. So here I've got, for my 1-egg pasta, I have a half a cup of flour plus 2 tablespoons of flour. And I'm using all-purpose flour. If you can find the Italian 00 flour, you can certainly use that. I find that all-purpose flour works beautifully for pasta. So what I'm doing is just creating a little bit of a well here in the center. And into that well, I'm going to crack my egg. And then into my egg, I'm going to put 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to put 3/4 of a teaspoon, of olive oil in there.
Mike?
Yes.
This is Suzanne. Is there any particular brand of flour that you prefer over others?
I typically buy King Arthur because I think they're a reputable company. I think they make great products. And anytime that I've made anything with their flours, typically stuff tends to come out well. If you find the Italian 00 flour, the brand that you want to look for is Antico Caputo brand, and it's marked as it'll have 2 zeros on the label. It'll say 00 flour. And what that is basically it's an Italian pasta flour. Actually, the Italians will use that for pasta or pizza. It's a very, very finely ground flour. But as I said, in lieu of that, if you've got all-purpose, don't make the trip. You can use all-purpose for pasta and it comes out fine. Now what I'm doing, I beat the egg and the salt and the oil together, and I'm slowly incorporating, using my fork, this pasta into the egg. And you want to do this slowly so that the flour has some time to really absorb some of that egg. And eventually you get to the point where you say, oh, the hell with it, and you start to incorporate this a little bit quicker. And then what I'm going to do is start to bring in this flour from the edge and start to bring this together a little bit. Now, sometimes, depending on humidity, depending on the age of your flour, depending on the heat or the coolness of the room, the egg may absorb most of this flour. Sometimes it won't, and you'll have some little pieces left over. So just basically what you want to do is get it to this point with the fork, where it looks like kind of a very shaggy, wet dough. Can everybody see kind of where I am with this? And then I'm going to clean off the fork because there's still a little bit of egg on there just to make sure that I get all of that. And then I'm going to go to a bench scraper. And I'm really just going to start to fold all of this together. And I've had people that will then start chopping it. Yeah, I don't want you to chop it. Basically, I'm just kind of folding this from the bottom to the top and just kind of trying to bring this all together. And I don't want to work it too much, basically just to the point where it's coming together. And I want to be careful here because I don't want to add too much flour at this point. If the dough still feels a little bit sticky, I can sprinkle this with a little bit of flour, but I really don't want to add a lot because the more flour you add to this, the tougher the dough will be. And if the dough is tough, then it's going to be hard to roll out. So I'm just going to knead this a little bit, really just to bring this together. And this actually pretty much absorbed all of this flour. I've got a couple of flour gremlins there, just see if I can get that into the dough. And that's my pasta dough. That's it. It doesn't get any simpler than that unless, of course, you're doing it in the food processor. So what I'm going to do with this is you can actually work this right now, but typically what I will do is let this rest. I'll wrap it in plastic. If you're going to use it within the next half an hour or an hour or so, leave it at room temperature. And really what you're doing is allowing that flour to really kind of hydrate with that egg and the oil in there. If you're not going to use it right away, wrap it, stick it in the fridge. So let me get a piece of plastic wrap and wipe off my hands. All right, so just to clear the decks a little bit, by the magic of TV, I have a piece that I did earlier today. Now, I've already rolled out half of it, but I wanted to show you how to do this. So when you do this, typically, unless you have a really, really big pasta machine, you're not going to get that through the pasta machine. So typically what I do is cut this in half. We'll roll out one half at a time. So let me show you how I do that. Talk a little bit about pasta machines. This is a pasta machine. This is the Atlas 150. The 150 is measured the width of it. Typically these machines come in 150, 150 millimeter, or they come in 180 millimeter. For home use, pretty much you're using the 150. There are really two machines for home use. One is the Atlas, the other is the Imperia. The difference really is the difference between the church or synagogue you go to and the one that you would never go to. The Atlas people would never use an Imperia. The Imperia people would never use an Atlas. So there's really no difference between the two machines. The mechanics are pretty much the same. What you have to remember with these is that they never come in contact with water. So when you're done with this at the end of the day, if there's any flour or any dough stuck to it, these actually come with a little pastry brush. You brush them off with the pastry brush, you wipe them down with a clean towel, and you put them away. If you get water on the inside of these, they will rust, and you basically got yourself a nice doorstop. So let me show you how this works. Now, Scott, if you can see that, there are two rollers here, and I'm starting at 0, which on this machine is the widest opening. And what I'm going to do slowly is work myself down, and you can see that the rollers start to come closer together, so you can actually roll out the pasta nice and thin. So you always want to start on the widest opening, which is the 0. All of these machines come with a clamp, and they do have to be clamped down to the tabletop because otherwise they're going to wiggle around on you. So let me do that. And then they come with a crank. And invariably during the class, the crank is always going to fall out onto the floor. Somebody always loses the crank. So let me kind of move some stuff around a little bit. The other thing that these usually come with is a pasta cutter. Tonight we're going to use the fettuccine cutter to cut our pasta. So I'll just hang on to that and I'll show you how that works. So my pasta dough has been sitting here at room temperature and it is a little tacky. So what I want to do is add a little bit of flour to my counter and just a little bit of flour to the pasta dough. And what I'm going to do is just kind of squash this down a little bit, get some flour on it so I can actually get it through the machine. So this is on the widest opening. And I'm going to do a couple of passes here. Each time I do that on the widest opening, what I'm going to do is fold this like a letter. And then what I do is start at the top and just kind of compress it to kind of get the air out of it. And if you've got a little bit, you can always fold that over. And again, here, maybe just a touch bit more flour on it. And I'm going to do this again, do one more fold. And just a little bit of flour. There we go. All right. So what I'm looking for, I don't want this to be sticky. As I'm rolling it out, if the dough is sticky, then it can stick on the rollers, and that's when you start to tear stuff. So if you have to, at this point, you can add just a touch bit more flour to dry that dough out. And now I'm going to go down to number 1 and do my first roll on number 1. Go to number 2. And I like to do these, some people will skip the numbers, but I like to do them really sequentially, and it works the dough nicely, and I think you get a little bit better product. So that was 4. And if you feel it's starting to get a little sticky, you can always add a little bit more flour to it if you need to. I think for right now, I'm okay.
Mike, this
Yes.
is Suzanne. What did
Hi,
people
Suzanne.
do? Hi. What did people do before machines like this?
Rolling pins. And in combat conditions, wine bottles. I've actually rolled that. I probably shouldn't talk about that. But yeah, I mean, typically rolling pins. I mean, that was the way that it was done before they had machines.
And so this point is to just get it as thin as you can?
It really depends on what you're doing. This machine goes down to a thinness on here of a 9. And what I do typically, it's going to depend how thin I go. If I'm doing a stuffed pasta or a ravioli or something like that, I will probably go a little bit thinner just because I'm going to sandwich them together. If I'm doing a heartier pasta, then I may stop at a 7 or an 8. Right now, this is at, actually that was a 7. So this is getting pretty close for me. And actually it's starting to get a little bit tacky. So I want to give it just a touch bit of flour. And let me go through it on an 8 and we'll see where we are. That's
Wow.
not bad. And let me do, I think I'm going to take this down to a 9. I'm living dangerously tonight. It's a Thursday night, but I want to get a touch bit more flour on here. Everybody with me? We're okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So there's my pasta at a 9. This is really nice and thin. This is going to be beautiful with our tomato sauce. So typically what I will do is just kind of say, okay, that's a reasonable size for fettuccine, so I'll cut that in half. And let me show you how the rollers work. Now for this, I want to actually dust this with a little bit of flour. Normally what I would do is just let these sit and dry out a little bit. If the pasta is still a little bit wet when you run it through the rollers, a lot of times the pieces won't actually separate. You kind of have to tear them apart. So to expedite that a little bit, I'm going to add just a little bit more flour to this, just to make sure that my pasta is nice and dry to run through the cutters. All right, so I'm switching the crank to the fettuccine cutter. And what I do is just try and grab this with my hand, and I've got my beautiful fettuccine. Now, what I do is I've got a little bit of semolina flour. Semolina is kind of a very coarse wheat flour. It's almost reminiscent of cornmeal, and I put a little bit of that down on my tray, and then as I put the pasta down, I kind of dust it with the semolina. What that does is help it to not stick together. You can use flour, but if you're adding more flour to the pasta, sometimes it can get a little bit gummy. And then I'm going to cut this one. Okay, so there's my pasta. Now, they do sell the pasta drying racks. Honestly, I'm not a fan because they're like wooden dowel things that you can kind of stick together. And of course, you get it loaded up with your pasta strands and then it all falls apart. So I'm a much bigger fan of using a sheet tray and doing it this way. Now, if you're doing fresh pasta, if I know that I'm going to have pasta for dinner, I'll do pasta in the morning. I will roll it out like this. This can sit on the counter all day. It is, and the pasta that I did earlier, you can see is going to be a little bit drier. So the cooking time may be a touch bit longer, but it's really not going to be much more than the fresh pasta would be. Any questions?
Yeah, Mike, hi, this is Sue. I have the KitchenAid attachments. Is there anything you do differently when you're using that? Or does it work exactly the same as with
It
the
pretty
hand
much
blender?
it pretty much works exactly the same. Actually, in fact, I was going to bring mine today to show the difference of it. The KitchenAid mixer, did I move too fast? You got me, okay. The KitchenAid mixer has an attachment that goes in up here. And it's beautiful because you've got constant speed, and it's very easy to dial it down to get the pasta thinner and thinner and thinner, and then you can swap it out for the cutters, or you can even cut it by hand. Initially, I had a problem with it because I was used to working at counter height, but once I got used to using the KitchenAid pasta, I really like it because of the constant speed. If I'm going to do a 1-egg pasta like this, and if I've got the KitchenAid handy, I'll pull out the rollers and oftentimes just cut the pasta by hand. But either way, either one works and they're beautiful. I think with this, you actually wind up, you can get your pasta a little bit thinner than you might be able to with the KitchenAid. That really may be the only difference.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. I did a class here at Culinaria, gosh, I don't know, almost 2 years ago. And it was a demonstration class, and we had almost 30 people, and I was doing a duck confit ravioli. And so we figured out the numbers, and every time I tell this story, the number obviously goes up, and I think I needed 7,000 ravioli. Okay, 100. But I said, wow, I've got to roll out that much pasta, and that's when I got the KitchenAid. And having that speed to roll out the pasta sheets like that was brilliant. So if you're doing a lot of pasta and you've got a KitchenAid, it's a great investment. All right, that's the pasta. Any questions or we're good? All right, I'm going to move on to the salad. Let me get all of the stuff that I need for the salad. Let me talk
Mike,
a little bit
it's
about
Suzanne
this. Yeah,
again. Just,
yes.
we usually use whole wheat pasta. We like the fiber and kind of the meatiness of it. But I
Right.
recently I bought DeLallo
Okay.
pasta. I'd never heard of it before, and it was so good.
I know the name. I know the name. I don't know that I've ever had it, but did you make it from scratch or you use their whole wheat pasta, the box pasta?
Yeah, I didn't use the whole wheat. I just used the regular, but yeah, they're linguine. It was the best pasta I ever had.
I know the name. Well, you didn't have this pasta, Suzanne.
No,
So-
well, you didn't invite me over.
Well, there you go. All right. Let me move on to the tomatoes. What I've got here basically is one very large, almost overripe tomato for our bacon, lettuce, and tomato salad. I cut this up into fairly fine, not fine, but chunks like that. And what I did was season this with some salt, because what I want to do is get some of that tomato water out of it. I don't want an excess of tomato water in here. Otherwise, it's going to water down the dressing. So I'm just going to let that sit, drain that out a little bit. Now, this tomato water, all this is basically is just the water from the tomatoes, the juice from the tomatoes, and a little bit of salt. So if you had a bunch of that, and you can see how much water's come out of, that's just one very large tomato. You can see how much water's come out of that. If you happen to have gin or vodka and needed to have like a Bloody Mary, that's great in there. Once again, it's come back to liquor for me. All right, so moving on with my salad. What I'm going to do is I actually want to get rid of a little bit of this liquid. And I'm going to put my tomatoes in the bowl. And I'm going to give them a little bit more salt, just to make sure that they're properly seasoned, and a little bit of cracked black pepper. And then I've got some mayonnaise. And this is basically my dressing. That tomato juice that's in there, which has a little bit of acidity to it, so instead of vinegar. And then I've got my washed chopped romaine, and I'm going to get that in there.
Mike, is that homemade mayonnaise?
No, this is Hellman's. What else would you put on a BLT?
Well,
That's what I would put on. That's what I would put on it. Yeah, that's what I would put on a BLT. There are times that homemade is great. There are times I was watching, Jacques Pepin is doing a series of videos on FaceTime. And he was saying something about, and they're real quick. They're 3-4 minute videos tops. And they're brilliant watching him and his techniques and just talking about food. And he said there are times that you absolutely need to have real mayonnaise or homemade mayonnaise, but there are times that you really need store-bought. Actually, I think it may have been Melissa Clark, maybe not Jacques Pepin, but either way, yeah, there are times that absolutely you want homemade, but for this, Hellman's is perfect. And for you Southerners, I'm sorry, not Duke's, it's definitely Hellman's. So I'm gonna add some of my crumbled bacon in there. What I did was cut the bacon into strips. The French would call them lardons. And you have to say that like you smell bad cheese. So there's my salad. Let me get some plates. And I'm going to go ahead and serve that up. They would have bit me if.
Nice.
There you go. And just because you can't have enough bacon, a little bit of bacon to garnish it. I'm going to leave these here.
Like, what type of bacon do you use and where do you get it? Because it seems like the store just usually has,
This is actually the Costco thick cut bacon, and it comes in a double pack. They used to have an applewood smoked bacon that was great, but I think this is just regular hickory smoked, but the quality of this is really nice, and because it's thick cut, you really get some nice texture out of it when you cook it. So that's typically what I do. A lot of times, in fact, if I'm doing this at home, rather than doing it on the stove, I'll put the whole strips on the grill. You can also do bacon in the oven. If you put it on a rack, on a sheet pan, you can do it in the oven, 325 for 20-25 minutes if you don't want all of that fat flying around on your stove. So I'm going to set that aside. Questions? Everybody's okay?
Question,
All
Mary.
right.
Do you have the skin on the tomatoes?
Yes. Yeah, I did not skin them.
Do you? But they look like they were skinned.
These were actually pretty thin-skinned. These were from Jersey. My son and daughter-in-law brought them back, and they did have pretty thin skins on them. I think the yellow ones tend to have a little bit thinner skin than the red ones. But typically for this kind of thing, no, I would not skin them.
Okay. Thanks.
All right? All right. So I want to move on to our pasta. My water is boiling here, so that's good. I'm just going to let that go. Let me talk a little bit about the tomatoes and how I'm going to deal with them. Again, what I've got here is just 1.5 tomatoes. I'm going to show you how I cut these up. Really, no mad science here. My garlic clove out of the way. Just kind of go through these and cut them into slices. I cored them. And then basically what I'm going to do is cut those sections in half and just kind of cut them into chunks like that. And again, as those of you that have done knife skills with me, when you're cutting stuff with shiny skins, once you get through those skins, cut on the inside because the knife will grab that. So that's it. That's all I'm going to do with the tomatoes. I've got a sprig of basil here. So let me get my tomatoes into the bowl. I'm going to take a clove of garlic and I'm just going to slice this thinly. This is optional. If you want the garlic in there with the tomatoes like this, a little bit of garlic flavor is nice. But again, purely optional. If you just want those tomatoes, the flavor of those tomatoes, go for it. So I'm going to preheat my pan. I'm going to get a little bit of oil in there. And really what I'm going to do is just toast the garlic just till it starts to brown a little bit. And then I'm going to pull the garlic out. I don't want that heavy garlic flavor in here. So I'm just going to let that kind of warm through a little bit. And then I'm going to put the tomatoes in with the basil, a little bit of salt and pepper, and just let them cook down very, very slowly. And then once we get to that point, I'll get the pasta ready. I'm going to go get my crab meat so I can get that set up. While I'm doing that, any questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so I've reserved a little bit of basil that I will chiffonade to serve with the pasta. Just wipe off my board. And the garlic is just starting to sizzle a little bit. If you like a little bit of heat on this, you can add a pinch of red pepper flake in there. But this is really kind of very minimalist. It's really, to me, this is more about the tomatoes. All right, so I'm just going to let that go for a minute. While I'm doing that, is Sherry still here? All right, can you just Follow me with the camera.
Well, look at that counter.
I'm going to embarrass you. So Scott, put on your face. You look gorgeous.
Thank you.
Guys, this is Sherry. Sherry is our office manager here at Culinary. I don't know why I'm yelling. I have a microphone. Sherry is our office manager and our mother hen. I have not seen her because I haven't been here since January, and I miss her dearly. So it is wonderful being here. And I know that I have to feed her, otherwise my life is miserable. So this is, I know. So enjoy the salad. Okay, I'm back. And my garlic is sizzling. Good, perfect. All right, I'm going to drop my heat down on this. And I can smell the garlic. So that is time for me to get that out. Because I just really want a hint of that garlic flavor in there. Now, if you're a garlic eater, by all means, leave it in. If you like it, that's fine. Just don't get the garlic too brown. Don't burn it, because then it gets kind of bitter tasting. So you want to be careful with that. Now, when you're doing the tomatoes, or when you're looking for tomatoes, if you're going to the farmer's market this weekend to try to get some tomatoes for this is a great opportunity to buy kind of the seconds, the nasty looking ones, the ones that people say, oh, I don't want that tomato. That one looks ugly. So this is a great time to use those kind of tomatoes. And even ones that are almost kind of on their way out, just trim around anything that may not look great and go ahead and get them in the pan. Now I'm going to cook this over medium-low heat because I just want these to break down. I barely want these to cook. I just really want that tomato flavor, a little bit of that basil and the olive oil and the garlic in there, and that's about it. So a little bit of pepper. All right, I'm just going to let those go. In the meantime, I've got another saute pan, and I'm going to put this over medium heat. I'm going to get a little bit of butter in there. And I'm going to get my crab meat. It's over here. Thank you. Why didn't you tell me that? So literally what I want to do is just melt this butter down and warm the crab meat through. The crab meat is already cooked, so I really don't want to do much to it. I just want to warm it a little bit. And of course, crab meat being as buttery and as beautiful as it is, just adding a little bit more butter to it. Just a wonderful summertime thing. So, all right.
Mike, you said the crab meat is cooked?
Yeah, crab meat is always cooked. You can't get crab meat out of the shell without cooking it. So anytime that you buy crab meat, it is always cooked.
Ah, okay.
All right, so I'm just going to let that go over warm heat, just to warm that through. Let me stick that back in the fridge. And again, depending on your taste, you can use a lot of crab meat. I'm really just going to use this as a garnish. So you can see the tomatoes are kicking off a lot of juice. You've got the olive oil in there. You've got a lot of that tomato juice in there. And what we want to do is really just let these tomatoes break down a little bit. And I'm going to cook off some of that tomato juice in there, some of that tomato water in there, and let this come together. Now, when I did this at home a couple of weeks ago, because it was 4,000 degrees out, I decided that I really didn't want this hot. So I cooked the pasta, I combined the pasta with the tomatoes and finished it the way that I'm going to do it in a minute. But I let it cool down a little bit. I didn't want a plate of really hot pasta and hot tomatoes. And for me, this time of year, that really kind of worked down. It wasn't cold, but it was just about room temperature. So my crab meat is going, and that's warming nicely. Beautiful. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to drop the heat way down on this because I really don't want this. Oh, and I'm smelling butter and crab meat. Ooh, that's good. All right, so just let that sit. That's going fine. My water is boiling here. I've got the largest pot that I could find for the little bit of pasta that we're going to do. And it is heavily salted. And so I'm going to drop my pasta in. Now, one of the things that we learned years ago was don't add oil to the water. Typically what we always used to do, and I remember growing up that my dad always did this, you added salt to the water, you added oil to the water. Don't add oil. Oil will coat the pasta and your sauce will not stick to it. So when you cook fresh pasta, normally now the box stuff, you know that that's 7 to 10 minutes, depending on the pasta or depending on the size of the pasta. This is quick. This goes in, you know, a minute, maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute. This is not the time to get on the phone with Aunt Harriet and talk to her about what's been going on in your family for the last 25 years. So get this in the pot, keep an eye on it. I want to grab a pair of tongs just so I will be able to pull a piece out and taste it. And then what I'm going to do is finish it in the sauce. So I've turned the heat down on this, and you can see that some of that tomato juice is cooked off. It's starting to thicken up a little bit, so I'm just going to let that go and get my pasta in.
Hey, Mike,
Yes.
the pasta that you made, that's enough for one or two people?
This would be enough for two. In my house, it would be enough for me. If my wife wanted some, she could fight me for a little. No, actually,
Okay.
This would be enough for two people. As I would say, as an entree course, certainly as an appetizer course, but I think you could probably squeeze two whole portions out of this.
Okay.
All right, so I'm just gonna check one, and I want this not quite cooked all the way through, and that's exactly where it is. So I'm going to pull my pasta out, and then I'm going to finish it in the sauce. Now, normally, if you were doing a thicker pasta sauce, you know, maybe a ragu, something that's cooked down for a while, you can add a little bit of that cooking water to the sauce, and that starchy cooking water from the pasta will help loosen up the sauce and again help coat the pasta as well. We have an escapee here. All right, so I'm just tossing that and really just kind of heating this through. I'm going to turn off my heat. We talked about chiffonata basil. I think we talked about, I'm sure at some point we've talked about a chiffonata basil. When you do basil, this is the last thing that you want to do right before you're ready to serve your dish, because basil is one of those soft herbs that will start to brown once you cut it. So the last thing, or start to oxidize. So just stack up these leaves together and then roll them tightly. And just go right across them. Scott, can you get the cherries for me? Thank you.
Is Scott your son?
Yes. And more importantly, he's the technical director.
Ah,
He's the one with the great camera eye.
Mike,
Now,
may I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask a crab meat question.
Okay.
So where we shop, they offer lump crab meat or jumbo lump. For something like this, is it worth paying extra for jumbo lump?
No. Honestly, in my opinion, no. When I buy jumbo lump, I want jumbo lump for something that is going to be really unadorned, where you want crab meat and you're willing to spend the money on it. For this, because you've got the tomato, you've got the pasta, you've got the basil, you've got all of these flavors going on, to me, it's a waste of crab meat. So this was actually lump. It was not jumbo lump. Good question, though. Years ago, I probably would have said, "Oh, the heck with it. I'll go with the jumbo lump." But honestly, I think it's a waste. All right, so
Did you get that from Costco also? 'Cause they
yeah,
did.
this is the Phillips. This is the
I
Phillips
got Phillips.
lump crab meat. Yes,
Yeah, do you own stock
So-
in Costco?
I don't. But if you want to find me on a Thursday afternoon, no, that's not true. I'm not there. I'm there irregularly. And for those of you of a certain age, if you were going to Costco, they've changed the what did somebody call it? The geezer hours. It used to be 9 o'clock,
Senior hours.
9 to 10. The senior hours. That's what I meant to say. It was 9 to 10 every day. It's only Tuesday, Thursdays now. So if you're geezing and going to Costco, make sure you're aware of the times. So there's
Wow,
one
that's
finished dish.
gorgeous.
Sherry does not eat crab meat, so I can't give her any of the crab meat, but there we go. That's our tomatoes with fresh pasta. That to me is kind of summertime on a plate. So actually,
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Now, what
Looks
kind
good.
of wine?
now,
What type of wine would you suggest with it?
one
white.
that tastes like grapes, preferably. No, actually, a chilled white, a chilled rosé would be beautiful like this. Even a light red, you could get away with a light red, maybe with a little bit of chill on it. We've been drinking a lot of rosés this summer, and a sparkling rosé, so that would go very, very well with this as well. So there's our pasta dish.
That's
I'm gonna-
wonderful.
It's
I'm gonna
beautiful. The
put one
Pims
down
would go
here.
good well with that too, right?
The what?
Pims with gin, Pims, and like the cucumber and everything else in it. It's really
And
nice and
once again,
hydrating.
we're back to liquor.
Oh my goodness.
All right. So I fed the boss. We're in good shape. Any questions on the pasta? Any questions on the salad?
No.
We're good?
Looks
All
good.
right. Okay, great.
I'm hungry.
Me
Let me
too.
show you how we do this. And the nice thing about this is that you can do this really with any kind of frozen fruit that you like. Is that does that? Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure. Scott's giving me the fish face when I do that stuff. All right, I'm gonna open the bag, and you wanna keep these pretty much frozen until you're ready to use them. Not rock hard, solid frozen, because you want the processor to be able to work. So I'm gonna dump my cherries in there.
Oh, I found it. I guess no pits.
I can find those in the.
Yeah, I hope there are no pits.
I
All
buy
right, let me
those
just-
at Costco. I know that. Those cherries are good there.
All right, I think I've got everything else that I need. I'm gonna, actually, before I do anything with this, I'm just gonna hit these once just to kind of break them up a little bit because these are still pretty frozen. I'm gonna add about a half a cup of yogurt. I'm using fat-free because that's what I had. If you want low fat, if you want full fat, if you want vanilla yogurt, would actually give this a nice bit of flavor.
Vanilla yogurt would be good.
So whatever works for you. And then, because you never know how sweet the fruit is going to be, this is about a quarter of a cup of sugar. I'm going to start with a little bit of that. You can always use honey as a sweetener or an alternative sweetener. And then what I'm going to do is just process this a little bit to kind of get everything together.
Mike, it's Lori Frumkin.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. Are you using regular yogurt? Can you use Greek yogurt, or is that too thick?
Yes, actually, that's what I used. This was one of the Greek yogurts. So I'm
Okay,
adding a
so-
little bit of water to this. Good, I'm sorry.
It's not that Greek yogurt then.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'm adding a little bit of water to this just to help the processor do its job and kind of incorporate everything. And that's getting close to where I want it to be. So I've had some chocolate warming, and this is bittersweet chocolate. And what I'm going to do is just start up the processor, and I'm going to drizzle that chocolate in slowly. By the way, I got to show you guys something. I found one of these at home. This thing is great. Peanut butter and jelly. These. Okay, I'm back now. All right, so I'm going to turn the processor on, I think. There we go. And I'm just going to drizzle that chocolate in.
Mike, could you use dark chocolate?
Yes. Yeah, actually, this was bittersweet to dark. So yeah, absolutely. I'm much more of a darker chocolate fan than I am a milk chocolate fan. So yes.
Sponsor directly on the dessert cups.
Well, dark chocolate's healthy for you.
So there's the sorbet with a couple of cookies
Scotty.
and a little
Oh,
spoon.
that looks great.
And there's your dessert.
Wow,
I'm
that's
gonna make that.
So it doesn't have to go back in the freezer or the refrigerator?
No, the rest of this
Just
I'll
come
stick in the freezer. I'll put it in a freezer safe cup and I'll stick it in the freezer. So we'll have that. But no, it doesn't have to go back in. And I think the thing depends really on the heat of your kitchen and how long you process it. These cherries were pretty well frozen.
Cherries, right.
If yours are a little softer, you know, just judge that as you're making it. So, any questions? All right.
I'm hungry.
What I am hoping for is that in August, I'm going to do 2 more classes. What I was thinking about was summer veggie class, because we're coming into really the peak season of summer vegetables. And I'll do an all veggie class. I was thinking maybe some of you may have done this with me, the ratatouille, the eggplant, the eggplant, zucchini, yellow squash, the bell peppers. And it is beautiful this time of year because we're really in season for that. If you have zucchini and you don't have, you've exhausted all resources on stuff to do with zucchini. I did a zucchini pizza last week, which turned out spectacular. It's a pan pizza with a very simple dough, and it works beautifully to get rid of zucchini. So maybe we'll do that as well. And then I was thinking of dishes that we can do that very low heat or minimal heat, get them done during the day and either chill them or have them at room temperature during the evening. So you've got some stuff for kind of those dog days in August as we're winding down toward the end of the summer. So any suggestions, any thoughts? You all have my email address. Send it to me. Send me any suggestions or any thoughts. I'll post a link to the video once we get it up online. And any final questions?
Mike, this is Suzanne. Did you get that email I sent?
I haven't checked email since I got here, Suzanne. No.
Okay.
No, because I was in the middle. I was in the middle of prep, and that email goes to the side when I'm doing that.
I wanted to know if I could ask the people here if they'd be willing to take a survey for a blog that I'm creating that's in development.
All right, if we can, why don't you and I talk about that online, and then we can decide maybe the best way to attack it.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
Mike, tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us about yourself. Are you a professional or trained professional?
I have my experience in restaurants is eating in them. Who asked the question?
Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Jeff Peters.
Hi, Jeff. I am a semi-trained professional, or maybe a dedicated amateur. I have been cooking for forever and ever and ever. I was lucky enough to be at L'Académie de Cuisine during their peak. And I got there and I started working there as a teaching assistant, basically as an unpaid assistant, but I got to work with some brilliant people. I had done in-home catering. I helped run the kitchen in my synagogue for a couple of years, clearly the wrong person to do that. All I knew was that the male crabs went into one pot, the females went into another. I was dead wrong.
Okay.
But Academy had a 20-week fundamentals program, and literally it started the first week with how to hold a knife, if you didn't know how to hold a knife. And each week, one night a week for 20 weeks, you did something different, but you built on the skills from the week before. So I was 2 years in at Academy. I took the 20-week class. The instructor asked me if I would assist with her, and I assisted for that class and no others at Academy for 7 years after that. So basically, I took the class 15 times, finally got it right. And what that solidified for me was it was about food and it was about teaching. And that's where that came together for me. The Academy stonewalled me for a year and a half saying, nope, you didn't go to culinary school. You never worked in a restaurant. No, 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 no. And one of my students, Marilena Levitt, who teaches here at Culinaria, said, you know, there's this school in Vienna. And I came over and I met with Stefan and Pete, and I realized that I had assisted probably 5 or 6 years before that, 7 years before that, with a 3-part Italian class with Stefan at Academy. And this became home to me. They said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to teach a lot of basic fundamentals and technique stuff. And they said, do what you want to do. And I've been here ever since. And almost 3 years ago, I started teaching at Sur La Table at Pike and Rose as well. And I've done some stuff. We actually did a series of classes with George Mason, Stephen, Pete, and I. And they have a master's in nutrition program. Cool. And they wanted their nutrition students to have some level of cooking skills. So between Pete, Stefan, and I, we did a series of semesters with the nutrition students at Mason. And two of my favorite classes that I've done, they brought me in to do basic classes for the men's basketball team and the women's basketball team. And it was extraordinary. They're a great bunch of student athletes. And for me, at barely 5'6", and the men's basketball team, you know, like this, it was like I'm in the forest with trees around me, but it was a really, really great experience. So that's kind of the quick and dirty on me.
Thank you, Mike.
And thank you for asking.
Mike, do you
Folks,
know when the Culinaria, this is Lisa DiCarlo.
Hi, Lisa.
Do you know when the Culinaria is going to start doing classes again? And
There are classes on the calendar now. There are classes. They're doing both demonstration classes and participation. I think for the participation classes, they are going to limit it to 6 people. And I don't know what the dates are, but I know that there is stuff on the calendar now.
Good.
Great.
Okay, ciao.
And then what are you going to
Everybody.
do the fee thing?
Thank you.
Well, you should do it where it's like a little club and have a fee thing so you can get compensated for your time here.
Well, the next class is honestly, we're trying to figure out something that's equitable because the guys, I've got to take care of the guys here at Culinaria. I've got to take care of the culinary team and the production team. So we're trying to figure out something that's going to be an equitable figure for everybody for the next series of classes.
I think that's fair.
Me too.
Excellent.
Agreed.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful night. Have a great weekend. Stay cool. Bye-bye.